involves billions, in this country alone, $300 billion, but it's costly to raise funds. It costs $50 billion to raise that amount of funds, $300 billion. So, so in this research, we try to create a simple, minimalistic method to boost charity givings without incurring additional costs. Let me briefly mention a few things. This method does not involve deception or coercion. And this method, well, it doesn't apply to all sorts of donations. It applies to donations that are for a particular group of people with a certain number of people in need of help. So I will elaborate on that a bit. And this method applies to both paper-based fundraisers and increasingly popular web-based fundraisers. Okay, so this method actually is extremely simple. So let me. The theoretical basis of this method is a combination of two things. One is initial scope in sensitivity, and the other is subsequent scope consistency. Okay, I'm not going to elaborate on these because the purpose of this talk is more applied. But both of these are very much based on well-established psychological research. Okay, so here's the roadmap. So I'm going to present 3 studies, and then I'll talk about other implications. Okay. So by describing the first study, I'll also describe the method. Okay. So this study is a hypothetical, based on a hypothetical scenario. And the second study is a field experiment. It's with real consequence. Okay, so in this particular study, we told survey respondents that imagine that Christmas is around the corner, and a local kindergarten sent you email and ask you for a donation to help their 20 needy children to buy Christmas gifts. Okay, so told them there are 20 children, and the money is to buy Christmas gifts for them. Okay, and then we have 2 conditions. The first condition, we just asked. Oh, by the way, we also included a picture of a typical child. So we make sure the so-called victim is always identified in this particular case, or identifiable in this particular case. We want to control for that. Okay. So in the control condition, we just asked, okay, so think about all of these 20 children, and how much are you willing to donate to help these 20 children? Okay, the indicator amount. Okay. Then the other condition, the treatment condition, we first ask a hypothetical question. We say, before you decide how much to donate to help these 20 children, first think about one such child and answer a hypothetical question. Okay? So it's a hypothetical question. And how much would you donate to help this one child? And after they have indicated this amount, then we ask the same question. Now think about all of those 20 children. How much are you willing to donate to help these 20 children? Okay? So we just asked the hypothetical question, and we told them in advance, before they answer this hypothetical question, there are 20 children who need your help. Okay, so there's no misinformation. Okay, so here's the result. So in the control condition, when respondents are directly asked how much to donate to help those 20 children, on average, they are willing to donate $18. Okay, so in unit asking question condition, when they were first asked how much to donate to help this one hypothetical child, they said $15. Then once they have answered this question, then how about 20 children? They $49. So it's a huge difference. Now, we don't always get so huge a difference, but the pattern has been replicated. And in fact, somebody else just replicate our finding using, and put on blog. So this is based on two effects, as I mentioned. One is what we call scope insensitivity. So in a between subject design, or we call single evaluation, when you are asked how much to donate to help 20 children, they think about children and think about their affection toward those children, and they say, oh, $20. When they are asked about one child, they also think about their affection toward the children, and they say, oh, yeah, $15. But once I have indicated $15 to help one child, then think about 20 children. All of a sudden, I think, I should multiply. Of course, I don't multiply by 20. I multiply by some, and in this particular case, multiply by probably 3. Okay, so this is a combination of scope insensitivity and scope consistency. Okay, so from psychological theoretical perspective, there's nothing new. But I think this is a nice application of these well-established psychological phenomena to something real. Okay. So let me just recap. It's based on those two phenomena, and it involves no deception or coercion. And this is different from the well-known foot in the door technique, and also the identify victim effect. I just want to briefly mention. The identifiable victim effect, we controlled for this, and we actually tested both conditions in which we included some individual information about victim, picture, individual information, their name, and also conditions in which we don't. And we find the identify victim effect and our unique asking effect are orthogonal. So there are two main effects, virtually no interaction. Okay, so these are two separate effects. And foot in the door typically works. So foot in the door also capitalizes on people's need for consistency. But that is more about attitudinal consistency. So if I've expressed my sympathy for the poor, then you ask me, are you willing to donate for the poor? I'm more willing to donate if I have expressed some sympathy for the poor than if I have not. But here it's more about quantitative consistency. Once I have indicated an amount for one child, then I would say I would donate more for 20 children. And also, foot in the door, in fact, a lot of cases, foot in the door involves some misinformation in the sense that when the respondent responds to the first small request, typically the respondent didn't know the larger request is on the way. But in our case, we told them in advance, there are these 20 children who need your help. So this one child question is just a hypothetical question. Okay. So secondly, let me briefly talk about a field experiment. So we did this experiment in a company, and in China, this company has about 800 employees, and we did this in an annual fundraiser. And this company had sponsored a school in Sichuan province after the 2008 earthquakes in Sichuan. And so annually, this company solicits donations both from inside the company and from outside the company to buy school supplies for those for children. And there are 40 children in this school. I think this is one cohort. Okay, so in that particular annual fundraiser, the company sent out email to all the employees and soliciting donations. Okay, and out of those 800 employees, 320 employees visited the website, the donation website. And now, not known to the web visitors, we designed the website so that it had two versions. The two versions were very similar to the two versions I mentioned to you. The standard version just asks them, how much are you willing to donate to help those 40 children? And the other one is, before you decide how much to donate to help those 40 children, think about one of those 40 children and think about how much are you willing to donate for this one child. And after they indicate this amount, then how much are you willing to donate for those 40 children, okay? And also we told them, you answer your question and you can revise it anytime before you finally submit it, okay? And if they donate, then the company would, I think, deduct the money from their payroll. And so this is real, this is not hypothetical, okay? And now, first of all, this unit asking manipulation didn't influence the web visitors who eventually donated, okay? So among the web visitors, 320 visitors, 54 versus 62% of the web visitors who eventually donated, okay? And these two percentages are not significantly different. Now, what's different is the final donation. So this is the control condition. On average, they donated each person. This is how much each person donated, okay? 325 RMB, Chinese yuan. And in a unit asking condition, twice as much. Almost, well, not quite, but much more, okay? Now, this is, we don't know, we haven't collected this data, okay? Because we told them we're not going to record your data. So this data, it's an estimate. So we don't know, but we know from other studies, okay? So this is a field experiment. Now, let me move on to one more experiment. This third experiment is an extension. It tries to address something, another issue in charity giving, that is scope insensitivity. One of the biggest issues in charity giving, if you ask me how much are you willing to donate to save 1,000 birds, I say, oh, $20. How much are you willing to donate to save 10,000 birds? Oh, $20. So people in between subject design or single event, people are highly insensitive to the number of people who need help, okay? So we propose that unit asking can not only raise the overall amount of donation, but can also make people more scope sensitive. So I will explain why a bit. So let me describe this. This study is very similar to the first study, not exactly the same. For example, this study didn't include a picture, and the context was somewhat different, but the design was the same, except that we manipulate the number of children who are in need of help, either 10 children or 100 children, okay? And it's 2x2 design. The other two is unit asking or control, okay? So let me show you the result. So first, let's take a look at the control condition. Without the unit asking manipulation, people are willing to donate about $20 to save to help 10 children, and about the same, in fact, slightly even lower, but that's not significant. About the same to save to help 100 children. Total scope insensitivity. Now this result has been well replicated in the literature. Okay. Then unit asking, people become much more sensitive. Okay, so now, this interaction, the interaction between the red line and the black line is significant, and this interaction indicates increased scope sensitivity. Okay, now why is that? The reason is, actually quite straightforward. So in the unit asking condition, when I ask you how much to donate to help one child, they say, okay, $10, okay? Then I ask you how much to donate to help 10 children. Then I multiply some. Well, of course, not 10 times, but I multiply some, okay? But once I said I'm willing to donate $10 to help one child, then how about helping 100 child? Then they also multiply more. They multiply even more, okay? Because now they have a common unit to base their judgment on, okay? Now, so this actually is basically the idea is the use of a scope insensitivity to fight scope insensitivity, okay? So let me go a little bit. we don't think this increased sensitivity, this effect can go forever. So the idea is, in the control condition, people are pretty scope insensitive. So this is a control condition, okay? So if one child, I'm willing to donate, for example, $10, 100 child, also about $10. But in the unit asking condition, if I asked you how much to donate for one child, then of course it doesn't matter if the total group has 10 children or 100 children, I donate the same, okay? But once I have this baseline, I ask you how much to donate for either 10 children or 100 children, then this is how much you are willing to donate. So here you can see two effects. One is this effect. This effect is what we call the unit asking effect. And this effect, that is the difference between these two slopes is the increased scoping sensitivity. But as you can see, if you have 1,000 children, I don't think it will go forever because either way it will become scope insensitive down the road. Okay? So finally, I think I will pretty much run out of time. How much time do I have? 3 minutes? Okay. Yeah. I can talk 3 minutes or more or less. Okay. So I think this scope, this unit asking method works for domains, can even be applied to domains other than fundraising. For example, auction, for example. So if I want to auction a set of, dinnerware, okay? A set of, for example, plates. So 12 plates. So one way is to say, how much are you willing to bid for the set? The other is I show them the set, but I ask them how much are you willing to bid for one, and then how much are you willing to bid for the whole set. Likewise, you can also do this to ask your dean to give you more research fund. If you want your dean to fund your research to run 12 experiments, instead of saying I'm going to run 12 experiments, how much are you going to support me? Say, I'm going to run 12 experiments, but think about one experiment. How much are you willing to donate? Not donate, the same as donation. How much are you willing to? Then say 12, right? Okay, so this has a wide range of applications. So the idea is, a small question based on psychological research can make a big difference in real life. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and thank you for keeping the time so we have room for questions. Yes?
How important is it to write down the amount and donated?
Okay, excellent question. So let me go back to the initial. So this experiment, in fact, so the first experiment, we actually included two other conditions. So this condition, they wrote down the amount. Okay, there's another condition. We asked them to think about how much would you be willing to donate for one child, but they didn't write down. And the result is somewhere between these two. Somewhere between these two. And in fact, somebody else just replicated our finding, okay? And also, this is not just due to people's attention toward the number 20. So we had yet another condition. Before they make a donation, we didn't ask a question. We just asked them to just repeat the number 20. Then it had no effect. So it is not because they pay more attention to the number 20, okay, well, whatever the number, but they have either thought about how much they're willing to donate for one child, or they have written down. But written down produce a greater effect.
Okay, we have more questions. Yeah.
Similar question. So lots of times charities they will provide the income, and they'll say you can help one child per day by just $20. So similar question. It sounds like you're getting at this and you're priming them with 20 conditions. But how important is it that they come up with the number for the unit rather than the number for the unit is provided for them?
Okay, so I think in your example, it's different from this, okay? What you are saying is one day versus multiple days. Here we're saying one child versus a group of children. okay? But I think your question, a different version of your question is, what if the organization provides an anchor for helping one child? We haven't tested this, but we believe people, if they have generated this number, I think self-consistency, I think, is probably is stronger. Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, okay, so excellent. So we didn't do this in charity giving because morally I think it's it makes no sense. How much I'm willing to donate for children, and then I can reduce an amount to help one child, okay? But we did show this effect with consumer products. So we asked them, how much are you willing to donate for, one plate? Then how much are you willing to bid for one plate? Then how much for a set? The other way is how much are you willing to bid for the set? Then about one, and we show exactly the effect you predicted, okay?
yeah, final question.
So, if you evaluate non-market goods,
If you what?
if you evaluate non-market goods and you went to the opposite side of the budget, you couldn't use this approach. Because they provide you guys have a top-down approach to evaluate non-market goods.
Yes, not only,
They say that because obviously incentive is growth, but also budget constraints.
Yeah.
Budget constraints of what they can spend the money on. So it's good to know whether you can give people ex ante information, tell them we're going to ask you to spend money on 20 in addition to one. Right now, we're going to
Yeah.
for one.
there are two important constraints to this method. One of them is individual's budgetary constraint. Of course, if I cannot afford, then, if I love children, if they ask me, for example, if I have limited budget, if I ask me how much I'm willing to donate to one child, I give up, I'm willing to give all my, the money I can afford. Then they ask me 20, of course I cannot raise, okay? So we actually have some evidence for this. So we tried, for example, between wealthy people and relatively financially constrained people, and this effect, unit asking effect, is greater among wealthy people who have less of a financial constraint. Okay, so this is consistent. The other constraint is how familiar they are with, the typical unit price. So, for example, if they are familiar how much each child needs, then this effect would be less. Okay, because there will be less scope in sensitivity to begin with. Okay, and so in commodity, it's the same. So if I ask you, if it's an antique piece of, it's a plate, something they don't know how much it's worth, then this effect would be strong. But if this is something, people know the price well, for example, the YX book, then this effect won't occur.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation.